طيب. طيب السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد. Continue inshallah from where we left off before the salah. The next chapter is وجوب التوكل على الله وحده لا شريك له. The obligation of putting your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone without associating any partners. So as we took in the last couple of chapters about the magicians and the soothsayers and fortune tellers and the likes, that all claim the unseen, claim to harm and to benefit. And this is the reason why, as we mentioned in the previous chapters, people slaughter to these idols and graves and the likes because they fear some harm from them or they hope for some benefit from them. And so here he mentions the obligation of turning away from all of that and putting your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. He's the only one that can harm you. He's the only one that can benefit you. This is min tamam Tawheed, and this is obligatory. So he mentions a number of verses again. So we'll read the the Arabic quickly, and then we'll go to the next chapter. وجوب التوكل على الله وحده قال الله تعالى فإذا عزمت فتوكل على الله إن الله يحب المتوكلين وقال تعالى فأعرض عنهم وتوكل على الله وكفى بالله وكيلا وقال تعالى وإن جنحوا للسلم فاجنح لها وتوكل على الله إنه هو السميع العليم وقال تعالى وتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت وسبح بحمده وكفى به بذنوب عباده خبيرا وقال تعالى وتوكل على العزيز الرحيم الذي يراك حين تقوم وتقلبك في الساجدين إنه هو السميع العليم وقال تعالى فتوكل على الله إنك على الحق المبين قال تعالى وقال موسى يا قوم إن كنتم آمنتم بالله فعليه توكلوا إن كنتم مسلمين وقال تعالى قال رجلان من الذين يخافون أنعم الله عليهم ادخلوا عليهم الباب فإذا دخلتموه فإنكم غالبون وعلى الله فتوكلوا إن كنتم مؤمنين وعن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه سمع نبي الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول لو أنكم تتوكلون على الله حق توكله لرزقكم كما يرزق الطير تغدو خماصا وتروح بطانا حديث حسن. And so here again, every verse that you heard, tawakkal ala Allah, then it's a command. It came in the sighat al-amr. It came in the form in the Arabic language of something called sighat al-amr, the command form. And so here Allah Azza wa Jalla is commanding you to put your trust in Him. If you, rahmukallah. And Allah Azza wa Jalla sometimes in some of these verses He said, put your trust in Allah. Allah loves those that put their trust in Him. Put your trust in Allah if you truly are believers. Put your trust in Allah and He is sufficient for you. Put your trust in Allah, He sees you. وهكذا. And at the last verse in the story of Musa alayhi salam, when he was with Bani Israel and they were commanded to go to a specific city, and so they said there is a qawm that are oppressive, that are transgressors, we can't go there, they're too powerful, they're aggressive, they're going to kill us, even though Allah commanded them. So they said to Musa, we're staying right here, you and your Lord go together. How rude and disrespectful they are. And they were the followers of Musa alayhi salam. So then Allah mentions these two men that came afterwards. قال رجلان, two men from those people that feared Allah and feared the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jalla upon them. They said to the rest of the qawm, they said to the rest of Bani Israel, udkhulu, enter upon them from the door. And so if you enter, you will be from the victors. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَتَوَكَّلُوا إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. And put your trust in Allah if you truly are believers. Allah Azza wa Jalla commanded them to enter, And so even if these people are oppressive and they look stronger and the likes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you need to put your trust in Him. And when He commands you to something, you fulfill it. And the last evidence that he mentions is the hadith of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, which is one of the last ahadith in the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لو أنكم تتوكلون على الله حق توكله. If you put your trusts in Allah truly the way you need to put your trust in Allah, then Allah would have provided for you just like He provided for the birds. How did Allah provide for the birds? They leave their nests empty, bellied, and they come home full. They come home full. And in this is an evidence, and there's many other hadith, in it is an evidence that the trust, putting your trust in Allah and reliance on Allah does not negate taking the means for that thing to actualize. And so here we have the birds. They never said, Allah's going to provide for us, let's stay in your nest, let's chill. La, they left their nests empty bellied and they fly around looking for their rizq. They come home fully and full. Likewise, if we put our trust in Allah the way that we really should, then if you left your house taking the means, then Allah Azza wa Jalla will provide for you if you only put your trust in Allah. And if you put your trust in Allah that way, then you would never need to go to a graveyard to ask for them for help. You would never need to go to an idol. You would never need to go to any of these things besides Allah. The main reason why these people go to the graveyards till today, that claim to be still Muslims, and give money to them and slaughter to them and beseech them and call upon them, Ya Ali, Ya Mawlana, Ya Kada, one of the main reasons is because they don't have no trust in Allah. They think that that thing, that person will benefit them or harm them besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if they had true trust in Allah, they would never have to go to those people and to those places. And so that's the end of that. And so with that he concludes majority of the topics related to Tawheed and Shirk. Now he goes on to the topic which is min tamam al-Tawheed. Min tamam al-Tawheed, the completion of Tawheed is that you follow the Prophet ﷺ completely, as we said. Remember at the beginning, what did we say at the beginning? The book. And he kept repeating. What was the two things we kept repeating?
Single out the Prophet
Ahsan. So what's the first one then? Ahsan. First, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. That's what we focused on the most from the beginning of at the beginning of the book, which was the meaning of La ilaha illallah and Muhammadur Rasulullah. La ilaha illallah in Arabic, what did he say the meaning is? Ahsant. La ma'buda bihaqqin illallah. There's no one that deserves to be worshipped in truth except for Allah. So that's in worship. That's the meaning of La ilaha illallah. No one deserves any action of worship except Allah, whether it's dua, slaughtering, khawf, and the likes. And the second part was Muhammadur Rasulullah. We said, what's the meaning of it in Arabic?
What
are you guys saying?
I was going to say the same.
Agree, yeah? No khilaf. طيب. لا متبوع بحق إلا رسول الله. No one deserves to be followed unrestrictedly except for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we mentioned anyone else that's followed, that's listened to, is in accordance to the Sharia. And so anyone that came after the Prophet ﷺ, from the ulama and the likes, the only reason why they're listened to is because they follow the Prophet ﷺ. And any statement that they say that goes against the Prophet ﷺ, then we do not follow them, because we've not been commanded to unrestrictedly follow anyone except for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so now he's coming to that second part. So min tamam, from the completion of following the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to stay away from the opposite, which is what? Innovations, bid'ah. So now that's the topic that he mentions here. Ta'riful bid'ah, the definition of bid'ah. He says al-bid'atu, innovation is اعتقاد أو لفظ أو عمل أحدث بعد موت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بنية التعبد والتقرب ولم يدل عليه الدليل من الكتاب ولا من السنة ولا إجماع السلف. He says that innovation is that a person has a belief, or that they utter a statement, or they perform an action that was innovated after the death of the Prophet ﷺ with the intention of worship, with the intention of seeking nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why did you go so far? Come back here. There's Brad. Come. Come close this way. Don't block the brother. Can you still see?
Yeah. No.
So what does it mean? It means any belief, action, statement that was innovated when? After the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But look, it's an important qaid. He's got the intention of what? At-ta'abbud. He wants to seek nearness with Allah with this thing that was invented. So what does that take out? That takes out anything you don't mean to seek nearness with Allah with. Like microphone. Microphone is an innovation. But is it an innovation that I'm doing ibadah with? Or is it a tool that is just innovated in the dunya that we're disposing, we're using? It's a tool in the dunya. Likewise, books, pen and paper. Likewise, the phone. Likewise, the cars. Likewise, tall buildings. Likewise, all of these things, innovations in the dunya is allowed. There's nothing wrong with it. Because what? You're not seeking nearness to Allah with that thing itself. بِذَاتِهَا. Is that clear? He didn't say, I'm making this, what's it called, skyscraper, and I seek nearness with Allah. That was for the sake of Allah. A skyscraper made. Or I made this for the sake of Allah. Like, it's a tool. Like the tool, wherever you use it with, you can get reward or sin. So if I use the microphone, which is a tool, if I use it to sing or to do music or the likes, you're using the tool for something haram, it becomes haram. You use the tool for giving a lecture or the likes, it becomes halal. That's a wasila. But the thing itself is not something that I'm seeking nearness to Allah with. Is that clear? But an action or a belief or a statement, and we're going to mention examples inshallah, that a person after the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, it was innovated with the intention, they intend by that thing to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there is no evidence for it. This thing that they intend to seek nearness to Allah with, there's no evidence for it. Where? In the Quran, nor is there any evidence for it from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, nor from the consensus, from the ijma' of the Salaf, meaning the Sahaba. And the firstly, three guided Salaf. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, my ummah la tajtami'u ala dhalalah. That my ummah do not come unite upon a affair that is misguidance. So if the Sahaba all united upon something, then that is allowed. So they don't have any evidence from the Quran, the Sunnah, or ijma' as-Salaf. A belief or an action or a statement after the death of the Prophet ﷺ with the intention of seeking nearness. Then he mentions 5 categories, just to help you understand the different forms that it can come in. The categorization, again, for min bab al-fa'ida, has many categorizations. And Imam al-Shatibi in his book Al-I'tisam bis-Sunnah, he mentions the book is full of categorizations on innovation and the definition of it and the likes. And he mentions that many different categorizations. So, la mushahata fil istilah, meaning you don't differ with someone else over this categorization. Don't say to someone else, if someone says to you tomorrow, oh, bid'ah categorizes into 2, don't say la. We learned that it's 5 and it has to only be 5 categories and kada, and you must be misguided because you said it's 2. La. Categorization here is just so for you to understand and to absorb in the different forms they can come in. Is that clear? So the first category he mentions is it could be bid'atun i'tiqadiyya, that a person has a belief which is an innovation. How does that come? He says, وَهُوَ كُلُّ اعْتِقَادٍ يُخَالِفُ الْكِتَابَ وَالسُّنَّةِ. It is every belief that opposes the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah. It is every belief that goes against the kitab and the sunnah. And so, an example of this is, and this is broad, is anyone that believes that there is good bid'ah and bad bid'ah. that not every bid'ah innovation that was done after the Prophet ﷺ that you seek nearness to Allah with is bad. There's some people that believe that some of it is good, right? So that belief that there is some good bid'ah and some bad bid'ah, that itself is a bid'ah. That itself is an innovation and misguidance. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ, as you're going to see, he said, كُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. Every innovation is misguidance. But then someone believes later, no, not every innovation is misguidance. Some innovation is misguidance, some innovation is not misguidance. That belief itself is an innovation. Is that clear? And most of the time, those people that hold this, they use weak, misunderstood evidences. Like we said earlier, they will confuse between an innovation in the dunya and an innovation in the religion. They will confuse between the two. So they will say, look, there's good innovation and bad innovation. They will say, an example of a good innovation is the microphone. Example of good innovation is this, is that. That itself is not an act of ibadah. So you misunderstanding affairs and then putting it in, and then based on that, you say, look, so madam the microphone is an act of worship, good bid'ah, we can have more good bid'ah. So they open a door for good bid'ah. So then anything that he likes that came after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, there's no evidence for it in the Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' Salaf, he would just say, no, this is, put it in the category of good bid'ah. Meaning he doesn't even have a bad bid'ah. Everything is good bid'ah. Once you believe that, is that clear?
So is it everything new in the religion, yeah?
Everything new, we said the definition is, what did we say? Any belief, action, statement after the death of the Prophet ﷺ with the intention, the niyyah of seeking nearness to Allah with this action, ta'abbudan, and there's no evidence for it in the Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' Salaf.
If you actually believe, you say that slowly.
I'll send it later in the group, inshallah, because it's in the book. It's in the book anyway. It's in the translation. What will help you understand this is to know two principles, just so you get a clear picture of this. Everything in the dunya, these two principles are very beneficial. Everything in the dunya, from the dunya affairs, then Allah has made it halal for us. The origin of it is that it is halal. So, for example, something from the affairs of the dunya is eating food, right? Wearing clothes, drinking the different drinks. وهكذا, anything, cars, anything from the affairs of the dunya. What's the origin of it? The origin of it is halal. How does that benefit you? If someone comes to you and tells you tomorrow, you're walking in a forest and you see a fruit that you've never seen before, and you're like, look, the origin is halal, you're about to eat it. Your friend says to you, no, akhi, I think this thing is haram, you know. This fruit is haram. What do you say? You say, what's your evidence to say it's haram? Why? Because the origin is Allah Azza wa Jal made everything in the dunya halal for us. You have to bring evidence to show that it's haram. It's not the other way around. He can't ask you, what's your evidence to say it's halal? The asl is everything in the dunya is halal. Is that clear? Then we go to the second principle, which is most important, and that's connected to our topic here. Everything that is an act of worship, that you seek nearness to Allah with, the origin is everything is haram. You're not allowed to seek nearness to Allah with anything up until you have evidence from the Quran or from the Sunnah or from the Ijma' that says you can. It's the opposite now. So if someone says to you, come, look, it's the middle of the month, let's go do this act of worship. The origin is that thing is haram. You should be asking for what? You should be asking for the evidence. What's your evidence that we should do this in the middle of the month like this and like that? If he brings evidence, you say, al-ayn wal-ras, like the Arabs say. Meaning, what's the English equivalent? Yani, hear and obey. Al-Muhim, I don't think there's an English equivalent, but basically, if there's an evidence, we follow it. We say, Jazakallah khair. There's evidence for it, Jazakallah khair. Let's go do it right now. If there's no evidence for it, the origin is what? It's haram. So that comes into the affairs of anything that you don't know in the religion, that's unclear for you. You have a right as a Muslim to ask, what's your evidence? I just want to stay clear. The origin of all acts of worship is that it's haram up until we have evidence from the Quran and the Sunnah. So just give me the evidence and Bismillah, we'll do it together right now. If you can't bring it, then ma'alish, I'm not doing it. If you bring it, أهلا وسهلا جزاك الله خير, let's go. Is that clear? طيب.
Third, what do we say to someone? They say that in the Quran there is tashkil and about the minarets and the masajid.
That's all the same thing. That's tools. Writing down the dots in the Quran or the rasm or the mushaf itself, the exact book, the way you use it, all of that is tools. You can use it for good things, you can use it for bad things. That itself is an act of worship? No. If you was to give it to other than Allah, you was to write something other than the Quran, would it be shirk? No. Is that clear? That's the shubha that they bring, minarat, this, all of that is tools. Why did they used to have minarets? Because they never had microphones. It was to help elevate the voice so it can reach loud. So it's a tool. The goal was to make the adhan go further. Is that clear? طيب. Any other questions?
What about praying like with the congregation?
Ahsant. Tarawih.
Yeah, Tarawih.
Yeah, same thing. So remind me after the next chapter, okay? And then we'll take that, inshallah. طيب, so he mentioned the 5 categories. Let's just mention them quickly. The first one is bid'atun i'tiqadiyya, an innovation that's in a person's belief. The second is an innovation in a person's statement, and it's every statement that a person says seeking nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with it, but it goes against the Quran and the Sunnah. It's an innovation from a statement. And these statements, they can differ. The level of it can reach kufr, bid'ah mukaffira, bid'ah mufassiqa, depending on what that statement is. Bid'atun badaniyah, an act of innovation upon a person's limbs. And so, for example, he says every harakah, every movement that takes place from a person, from a human being, ta'abbudan, seeking nearness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with it, while it's opposing the Quran and the Sunnah. For example, people that dance when they are listening to, for example, they're doing the remembrance of Allah, like the extreme Sufis that say huwa 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 Allah Allah Allah, and what they do, they're doing semicircles and mashallah, and acrobats and Olympia, Allah musta'an. That is from the innovations in a person's physical body. Dancing is not an act of worship. They added it into the religion, and they did it in the masjid, the masajid of Allah, whilst saying the name of Allah. That's an innovation. What's the principle? The origin that is haram. What's the evidence from the Quran, from the Sunnah, from the ijma' that says you can dance when you are remembering Allah? If they bring it, khalas, we're all making circles tonight. They don't bring it, the asal is haram. Clear? واضح. Last, the fourth one, bid'atun maliyah, innovation that takes place in a person's money. So that is that a person uses his wealth and money seeking the nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in something that is something that goes against the Quran and the Sunnah. So the Sharih, he mentions, for example, that a person, he pays money in order to slaughter to other than Allah, or he pays money to build the aqbab, those houses on top of the graveyards, or that he uses his money to form a group, a hizbiyah, partisanship, and the likes of these innovations that they think that they're seeking nearness to Allah with. Lastly is bid'atun tarkiyah. You know how we said in the actions of the Prophet ﷺ, we said there is sunnatun tarkiyah. What does it mean in English?
Well, left off.
We said there is a sunnah that is left off. So if the Prophet ﷺ left off something, then it's sunnah for us to leave off something. And we said from that is all innovations, right? But from those is a sunnatun tarkiyah, when the Prophet ﷺ, he did what? Something he left off.
He threw the gold ring.
Ahsant. We said the Prophet ﷺ had a gold ring, then later revelation came to him to make it muharram, haram. The Prophet ﷺ took the gold ring and threw it. So what did the Sahaba do? They all took their rings, they all threw it, the gold ones. The Prophet ﷺ left it off, so it's sunnah to leave off gold rings, tarkiyah, or to abandon it. And we said all haram and innovations the likes. Here we have bid'atun tarkiyah. That a person can fall into innovation by leaving off something, seeking nearness to Allah by leaving off that thing. Example. هو كل ما ترك من الدين أو المباح تعبدا. It is everything that a person leaves from the religion or from the permissible affairs. Why is he leaving it off? He's leaving off seeking reward from Allah. For example, the person that says, I'm never going to get married, and I'm seeking ajr and nearness to Allah by abandoning marriage. Or he says, I'm never going to eat meat, ta'abbudan, hoping for reward from Allah. I will never eat meat. So he left off eating meat, or he left off, getting married, or anything else, seeking nearness to Allah. Then this is an innovation. The Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, there was 3 Sahaba that heard how the Prophet ﷺ was in his house, how much ibadah he would do, and they were like, where are we from the Messenger ﷺ? Look how much he does. So they wanted to do more and push themselves. What did they say? Each one said, one of them said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to fast and I'm never going to break my fast. Another said, I'm going to stay away from marriage and I will never get married. And another one said, I will leave off meat. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, indeed I fast or I pray the night. Indeed I fast or pray the night, I can't remember which one. And I break my fast and I sleep. Indeed I eat meat and I get married. فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever turns away from my sunnah, then he's not from me. And so that person leaves off something, seeking the nearness of Allah in leaving that thing off, even though it's sunnah to do it or it's permissible to do it, then he's added something to the religion of Allah. Is that clear? Is that clear? Any questions on that? So that's the examples he mentions. Then he mentions the next chapter, uhdhurul bid'ah. Be aware and stay away from and be warned from innovations. He mentions here the evidences. He says, Aisha radiallahu anha, she mentions that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa rad. Whoever innovates into this affair of ours that which is not from it, then it is rejected. And the next hadith, which is similar to it, also from Aisha radiallahu anha, Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad. Whoever acts upon an action that is not in this affair of ours, then it is rejected. In these 2 hadiths, these 2 wordings, we get 2 benefits from it. The first one is, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that whoever innovates an action into this religion of ours, then is rejected. So an innovation that's innovated by a person. So let's say we have a person called Khalid. Khalid innovated a new bid'ah, trying to seek nearness to Allah with that bid'ah. His action is rejected. طيب. Then we have another guy called Zayd. Zayd, he never innovated any innovations. He just copied Khalid. He said, yo Khalid, what are you doing? Look, you know what? I'm going to do that too. You're going to say, Akhi, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever innovates an innovation, kada. He says, I never innovated, nothing. Khalid did it, I'm just copying Khalid. طيب, the second hadith is applied on Zayd. You say to him, the Prophet ﷺ also said, whoever acts upon an action that's not from this religion of ours. So you never invented it, but you acted upon it. Then your action is also rejected. So it takes out both of them, the one that innovated and the one that acts upon the innovation, even though he never innovated. Is that clear? Then we have the next hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu, that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he delivered a sermon, a khutbah, and he would say, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا خطب يقول, when the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to deliver the sermon. Whenever you see, there's a benefit in hadith in Arabic. Whenever it's said كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Messenger used to, it doesn't mean it was a one-off. It means it was dimatan, it's something that he regularly used to do. So this is the sirah that came in. كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم used to, when he delivered sermons, say what? He used to say the following. أما بعد, as to what follows, فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله, the best speech is the speech of Allah. وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم, and the best guidance is the guidance of the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم. وشر الأمور محدثاتها, and the most evil of affairs is the newly invented ones. وكل محدثة بدعة, and every innovated affair is every newly invented affair is an innovation. وَكُلَّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ, and every innovation is misguidance. وَكُلَّ ضَلَالَةٍ فِي النَّارِ, and every misguidance leads to the hellfire. So the Prophet ﷺ used to say this. Look, he never used to say it one-off. He used to say it every time he delivered a khutbah. Have you never heard this words before?
Jumu'ah.
Where do you hear it?
Jumu'ah.
Salat Jumu'ah. Sometimes or all the time? Every week, right? Prophet ﷺ used to say it every week. Did any innovations exist in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ?
No.
There was not one innovation in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. But every khutbah the Prophet ﷺ would say this. And likewise, the Prophet ﷺ would say this when someone's getting married. Khutbah al-hajjah, the same khutbah he would say when two people are getting married. Then why would the Prophet ﷺ emphasize it so much, something that he would repeat so much? Because this was something that was going to harm the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ and weaken it a lot. And that's what occurred. And that's what happened. So innovations is something big that harms the Muslim ummah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to guide them back to the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ completely and to give them rushd. طيب. So that shows you that we need to be away, stay away and be warned from innovations. طيب. What was your question, Akhi? What's your name? Tijan. What's your question?
With the Tarawih prayer in congregation.
Is it sunnah or innovation? Okay. So this question is, by the way, something that is regularly asked about. What's the story? The story is, and usually people only know the second part of the story, which is that Umar bin Khattab, perhaps the reason is because people of misguidance try to use this a lot, so much that everyone knows about it, but they don't tell you the full story. They cut and paste. So the full story, I'll tell you the full story in a second, but I'll tell you what they say, which is true, but it's not the full truth. They say that the Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu, one day he came out and he saw the Sahaba praying mutafarriqeen, the night prayer in Ramadan. Some of them praying over there, some of them praying over there, everyone's praying by themselves. So the Prophet, what did Umar do? Umar, he got everyone together, he put one imam, and everyone prayed congregation under one imam, the night prayer in Ramadan, which we call now Tarawih or Tahajjud. So what did Umar say? He said, Ni'mal bid'ah hadi. What a great innovation this is. What? Does that mean that there's good bid'ah and bad bid'ah? This is where it comes from. That's the strongest evidence that they use. But they cut and paste for it. They give you half-truths for it. Okay, so this is the full story. Uncensored. Like they say today, that's their favorite word today. Allah understand. So the full truth is, and the full story is that the Prophet ﷺ, the first half, the Prophet ﷺ, when he was still alive, he came out in Ramadan and led the prayer, the night prayer, the Tarawih that we call, the night prayer, with all the Sahaba praying behind him. The first night of Ramadan, they all prayed behind him in congregation. So which shows you it is sunnah, right? Then the second night he came out, they prayed behind him. Then the third night they came out and they prayed behind him. I think on the fourth night, it was the third or the fourth night, they came out again. Everyone's in the masjid. They're waiting for the Prophet ﷺ to come out to lead them again for Tarawih. The Prophet ﷺ never came out. The Prophet ﷺ was looking for his house, because his house was, you could see the masjid from there, Aisha's house. So he saw them, but he never came out. So they asked the Messenger, the next day what happened? We're waiting for you to lead the salah. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, I knew you were there, but I feared, look at the shahid, I feared that if I came out and I prayed with you the whole month of Ramadan every night, that it would become obligatory upon you. I feared that it would become obligatory upon you. If it becomes obligatory upon us, then what does that mean? It means there's no choice. Once you come from your 9 to 5, that night you're praying Qiyam al-Layl, 11 rak'ahs. And if you're in Mecca, Medina doing Umrah, how many are you praying? 23 before. And if you lived in the time of Umar or some of the other Salaf, you'll be praying 40 rak'ahs. Khasab. Obligatory. If the Prophet ﷺ completed the whole month. But out of shafaqah, out of mercy for the ummah of Muhammad ﷺ, because the 5 daily prayers is the only 5 dailies that are obligatory. Everything else from the prayers is sunnah. So shafaqatan, rahmatan, mercy upon the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he only came out for the first 2-3 nights to show them that it's sunnah, to show them that it's part of the religion, part of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he left being continuous on it to show you that it's voluntary, it's not obligatory. So the first action the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did shows you that it's sunnah. But the Prophet ﷺ leaving it shows you it's not obligatory because the Prophet ﷺ left it. If the Prophet ﷺ did it and left it, it means it's sunnah. We can do it, but we don't have to do it. But if the Prophet ﷺ did all of Ramadan, he feared that it would become obligatory upon them. Is that clear? Now that's the full story. Umar came later, so in the time of Abu Bakr, 2 years, when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and Abu Bakr was the leader for 2 years, they never combined again. Then Umar came in his time when he was leader, they never combined again. Then he saw that, look, people are still praying in the masjid. Everyone's praying by themselves. The Prophet ﷺ already prayed with them together once, and now revelation is not going to change. Revelation is cut after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. So if they all prayed the 30 nights, is it going to become obligatory? It can't. It can never be obligatory because the Prophet ﷺ already passed away. So Umar said, instead of everyone praying separately, bring them all together and let them pray under one imam, just like we did with the Prophet ﷺ. When they did it, he said, what a ni'mal bid'ah is. And the bid'ah here was the linguistic, that's what the ulama say. It was the linguistic meaning, because in the Arabic, we have a linguistic meaning, meaning the language itself, and we have a terminology. Terminology means the definition. What's the definition we said? Every action or statement or belief that is after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. That was the definition we gave you, that's a terminology. But if I want to use it linguistically, even in English, if I say innovation, but I'm talking about a chair or a car, this is a sick innovation. Am I talking about innovation in religion or innovation in the language? Which one? Language, right? So if we know that there's these two usages, then know that this is the usage that Umar bin Khattab meant. Is that clear? That he brought the people together and not everyone's praying separately, linguistically. But the origin of it is sunnah. Is that clear? Let's just say, for argument's sake, Umar meant bid'ah. Okay, terminology. Is it? Let's look at the facts now. Is it bid'ah or is it sunnah? Look at the facts. Prophet ﷺ did it, right? Khalas, it's not bid'ah. Is that clear? And the son of Umar bin Khattab, Abdullah bin Umar, he said, so this is his father, his son said, كل بدعة ضلالة. Every innovation is misguidance. Even if the people saw it to be good. Every innovation is misguidance, even if the people saw it to be good. The people see that this is good, kada. But every innovation in the religion is misguidance, even if the people think or see it to be good. Is that clear? Does that answer the doubt? Any questions? خلاص. طيب, then, so that's the affair of bid'ah, and he does a ta'liq on it, and we pretty much mentioned that. So going to the last chapters, inshallah, it's the same topic now. It goes into the affair of what's the ruling of building like shrines and houses and the likes on top of graves. What's the ruling of that? Ala al-qubur. He says that Jabir radiallahu anhu narrated that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يجسس القبر وأن يقعد عليه وأن يبنى عليه. What is the translation, Jay?
Prohibited plastering of the graves and sitting upon it and building upon it.
So the Prophet ﷺ prohibited 3 things. First one, plastering the graves, as it says in English. وَأَن يُقْعَدَ عَلَيْهِ, and that person sits on it. وَأَن يُبْنَى عَلَيْهِ. The shahid is the third one, which is that the Prophet ﷺ prohibited from building on top of the graves, building houses or huts or what do they call it, uglu, top of a grave. That's what it looks like, or anything else similar to it. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited building on top of these graves. Is that clear?
I don't understand the first prohibition.
Wallahi, أحتاج أراجع. I have to go back to it, inshallah.
What would you say to those people that say then, with regards to the Prophet's grave, how they built Makkah?
Ahsant, remind me at the end. Ahsant. Let's make that the last thing of the book, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Remind me though. طيب, then he mentioned second evidence. Prophet ﷺ, he said, or Ali radiallahu anhu is speaking in this narration, he says, Ali said that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, ألا أبعثك نعم على ما بعثني نعم عفوا. This narration, Ali radiallahu anhu, he says to this tabi'i, shall I not send you upon a mission that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sent me upon? And he said, Bala. So the Prophet, he said, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to me, ألا تدع تمثالا إلا طمسته. Do not leave any drawing or picture except that you wipe it out. ولا قبرا مشرفا إلا سويته. And no grave that is high except that you level it. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was the authority of that time. He sent Ali ibn Abi Talib on this journey, and when Ali became the authority and leader, he sent this tabi'i on this mission, which is any picture that he saw, statue or the likes, that he wipes or smudges or takes away the face. وَلَا قَبْرًا, and nor does he come across a high grave except that he levels it. And so from the signs of the people of Tawheed, just like the Prophet ﷺ commanded Ali, and just like Ali afterwards commanded the tabi'i, and just like the ulama and the rulers that came after that upon Tawheed, from the signs of Tawheed is that we don't have the dhuhur and the manifestation and the widespread of high graves and houses on top of graves and shrines on top of graves. In fact, it's from the signs of the people of Shirk that they build on top of the graves and they have shrines on top of it and houses and the likes. Prophet ﷺ, he said that you do not go past a high grave except that you level it. And as I said, the Prophet ﷺ was authority, meaning he was the ruler, he was the leader. You can't now in England say Prophet ﷺ sent Ali on that. Lads, let's go on a mission. Let's go to the cemetery. Every high grave, let's level it. No, we're not in authority. Okay? And the ruler never told you to do so. If you go to a Muslim country, the ruler says to you, or the one in charge says to you, do this, and say, Al-Ain wa Ras. I think you guys are going to memorize this from me. Upon the eyes and the head, meaning...
Here and away.
And I'll do it basically in Arabic here. It's a better way of saying it basically. Al-Muhim, we need to stress that no one from here goes to the cemetery now and starts leveling things and moving flowers and moving this and moving that. You can't do that if you don't have authority. You can't change evil if you don't have authority. Authority is that you're the leader or the leader sent you on this mission. Ya rahmakallah. طيب. Then he mentions قُلْتُ يُؤْخَذُ مِنْ هَذَيْنِ الْحَدِيثَيْنِ. He says we benefit from these two hadith that were mentioned. We read the second one, right? Yeah. The first is impermissibility of building on top of graves. The impermissibility of plastering graves. Number 3, impermissibility of sitting on top of graves. Number 4, impermissibility of drawing dhawatul arwah, drawing things that have souls inside them. So that includes statues, it's haram. That includes drawing pictures like on paper. That includes what else do they have? There's one more thing. Statues, drawing. There's something else I forgot. طيب. العلماء يقولون ما يجوز، لكن من باب التعريف فقط العلماء قالوا لا بأس فيها، خاصة في هذه البلاد الكفار، يعني أظن واجب ما يسمحون لك إلا بهذا فقدر الاستطاعة. لكن هي التصوير ذوات الأرواح, things with souls, that includes human beings, angels, or any of these things, making statue out of it, drawing it, painting it and the likes, all of that is haram. If you have to draw, then draw things that don't have a soul, like I don't know, the sea and the likes of these affairs. Does picture enter into this?
No,
Photograph.
Belongings of this person.
Hassan.
The last time when we seen like a hat, and we see the interview stick his hat off. In the public, they brought in something.
that belongs to that person. And another question is.
So what's the question? What's the question? Moving it?
Nah, not moving it. Like leaving people's belongings.
Yeah, no, Allahu A'lam, I don't know. Like generally speaking, the grave there's not supposed to be no ta'zeem to it. It's a place where you remember Allah. Okay.
How about, some people put like radios there to pray Quran.
Subhanallah. I think that's. I think that's is may Allah guide us in them, but you shouldn't do that. Shouldn't do that. Al Quran is for the person that's alive to benefit him, not the person that is dead. Prophet ﷺ said, when the Bani Adam passes away, all of his actions are cut off except for 3. Except for sadaqatun jariyah, ongoing charity, or beneficial knowledge that he left behind, or some children that make righteous children that make dua for him. He never mentioned having someone recite Quran over his grave. He never mentioned any of these things. Okay, so yeah.
I think it's widespread that people read Fatiha.
Yeah.
Whenever they.
Allah understand. Yeah. We're gonna go to the qubur in a second. It's another chapter on the adab of going to the graveyards. We'll mention that.
What about cartoons, like Islamic cartoons?
Yeah, ahsant. So the ulama, they mention it's not allowed. All of these things, cartoons where it has pictures and faces and the likes, is haram. It's haram. That al-arwah. The only mas'ala that is left is what? Is the one that's usually asked about a lot. What about photography on the phone and the likes? So the ulama, there's a big difference between the ulama that is alive today that caught these pictures, between those that say it's haram and then it enters under this hadith, and those that say it's allowed and it doesn't enter in this hadith in the first place. And so there is a difference of opinion, legitimate difference of opinion between the scholars, and you look at the opinions of both sides and you follow that which you believe is closer to the truth. If you don't have the ability to do that, then you blind follow a scholar that you trust, like Sheikh bin Baz or any of the other ulama that you trust, and that's enough. If you see someone else though that holds the pictures to be halal based upon evidence, not because of desires, and they hold it to be halal, then you don't be harsh with them and the likes. As long as a person is not following desires and there's actual difference of opinion between the scholars, a lot of scholars, then it's something that you should bear in mind. Is that clear? There is a difference of opinion between the scholars. Even those that hold it to be permissible, they mention strict conditions though. So from those that hold it to be permissible, there are those that say the picture on the phone, Shaykh Abdul Muhsin Abbad says this, if the picture's on the phone is permissible, but printing it out becomes haram. The camera, the photography and the proper professional cameras is allowed, but the moment it gets printed, like they used to do, especially back in the day, they would put it in water and then hang it and the likes. That's haram. Taking a picture, photograph, and then putting in a gallery thing and then hanging it up, haram. All of that the ulama they mention is haram. It enters into the haram. Like, is that clear? So it's best to be careful with it in the first place. Number 5, wujub tams suri dhawat al-arwah. That is obligatory upon a person to rub off any pictures of things that have life within them, especially in your own house. And it's hard today, wallahi, it's not easy. It's hard today because everything that you buy has got a picture in it. Pampers that you buy has got pictures in it. The food that you buy, the tea, everything you think of, everything's got a picture, sadly. Lilasaf al-shadid. So what do? Allah understand. Prophet ﷺ said that the angel does not enter a house where there's a picture and a duck. فلنحذر, may Allah Azza wa Jalla make it easy for us. Number 6, وجوب هدم ما بني على القبور. To put down anything that's been built on top of the graves. And this is, again, we said, for people that have authority. And so we have, for example, we said this is a sign of Tawheed, right? So we have, for example, in the Baqi', where many of the Sahaba were buried, we had high things built on top of it and houses and the likes, just in 150 years ago, 200 years ago, sadly. And then when the dawla that's there right now, Saudi Arabia, came and they were upon Tawheed, they leveled the graveyard of the Baqi'. Anyone that's been to Medina or seen pictures of Medina, you don't find houses or shrines or anything built on top of it, right? It's level. You don't even have asma, you don't have names. Which grave is this, which grave is that, which grave is this? Why? So people don't go into extremism. Oh, this is Aisha's grave. To stop that, people even thinking about making dua to the person's grave, they cut all turuq. And this is upon the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Why? The Prophet ﷺ said that you do not go past a grave that has got pictures except that you wipe it out, and nothing that's high except that you level it. Isn't that the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? The moment Saudi Arabia did it, Wahhabis, Wabbalas, Kada, Madriyash. Why? Because they just leveled something that they innovated. They went back to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The one that went back to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, they say about him, he came with a new religion. And that is from the signs of the hour, that a person, the people will be upon misguidance, and if someone comes to correct them back to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, they will say, look, he came with something new, he came with something evil. He came with the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He came with what they were upon already. But because the mafahim has been completely switched around, the good became bad and the bad became good. Then he mentions the next chapter, Afwan. So number 6, then he mentions a statement of a Shawkani. He mentions that, and he lived in Yemen at a time when the Sufis were plentiful and the people of misguidance. Allah yarhamhu. He mentions that وإذا تقرر لك هذا علمت أن رفع القبور ووضع القباب والمساجد والمشاهد عليها قد لعن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فاعله تارة كما تقدم. He says, if you've come to know this, that you remove building on top of the graves and putting qibab, shrines and houses and masajid on top of these graves, that the person that does this, Prophet ﷺ at times has cursed that person. And at times, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that the anger of Allah Azza wa Jal is upon a group of people. اتخذوا قبور أنبيائهم مساجد. They took the graves of their prophets as a place of worship. So the Prophet ﷺ made dua against them, and he mentioned that the anger of Allah Azza wa Jal has intensified against them over that which they performed from ma'siyah, from disobedience. And at times, the Prophet ﷺ, he just warned against it, and at times he sent people on a mission to level it down and to break it. And at times the Prophet ﷺ, he said, this is from the actions of the Yahud and the Nasara, this is from the actions of the Jews, of the Christians, that they build on top of the graves and the picture making and the likes. And at times he says, لا تتخذوا قبري وثنا تعبد في رواية. Do not make, this goes to your question, do not make my grave a place of worship, an idol, a place that people come back to, يترددون إليها, that they worship. And the Prophet ﷺ at time, he says, لا تتخذوا قبري عيدا. Do not make my grave a Eid. What's a Eid? Eid is something that comes from the word عاد يعود in Arabic language, mean to return, something that always returns. How many Eids do you have in the year? 2. Why is it called Eid? Because it comes around every year, 2 times. Every single year it comes back around, Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr. And we don't have any Eid except for these 2. So any other Eid celebration thing that comes around yearly, that's celebrated on a yearly basis, is haram, except for these 2 Eids. Like the celebration of a person's birthday, like the celebration of Mawlid, like all of these other celebrations that occur constantly, then it's Muharram. Likewise, the Prophet ﷺ warned against making his grave a Eid. How? By constantly coming back to it. That person goes there, and he comes back to it yearly or monthly or weekly, seeking nearness to Allah with it. The Prophet ﷺ warned against it.
I was about to say, does the Eid have to be like an ibadah? What if it's like a adah? Let's just say, for example, a birthday. He doesn't believe it's a ibadah.
But you know why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said we don't have any except for those 2.
So would National Day be impermissible?
Ahsant, it's impermissible. لا شك قولا واحدا. And anyone that says that it's permissible is قول شاذ. It goes against the proofs, and there's no proof for it.
What about anniversaries?
It's the same thing. It's Eid, right? If it's come back every year.
Yeah, but some people, they use tricks to say, we don't have to do it.
No. Anniversary, anything that comes around yearly, that's a celebration, it's Muharram. The only thing that's allowed is one-off event celebrations, like a wedding. Is a wedding Eid? No, because it doesn't come around. That same wedding, it doesn't come around every day. If it does, then it's an anniversary and it's haram. Celebrating that a person finished the Quran. A person finished the Quran one time. He's going to start celebrating that day. I've finished the Quran this day every. Then it becomes a Eid and it becomes haram. وهكذا. Is that clear? Someone graduated, someone did kada. One-off celebrations allowed. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not Eid. But the moment a person takes that thing, even if it's a permissible affair, and it becomes a yearly thing, it becomes haram. Not because it's an act of worship, because the Prophet ﷺ prohibited against it. Is that clear? طيب. So the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned all of these things, which shows you the importance of this affair. And imagine the Prophet ﷺ, he started his da'wah with Tawheed. قولوا لا إله إلا الله تفلحوا. Say La ilaha illallah and you'll be successful. And the Prophet ﷺ, he called to Tawheed for 10 years without calling to anything else in Mecca. And he continued up until he went to Medina. Up until when? Up until 5 days before his death. 5 days before he passed away, he was saying these statements. لعنة الله على اليهود والنصارى. May the curse of Allah be upon the Jews and the Christians. اتخذوا قبور أنبيائهم مساجد. They took the graves of their prophets as a place of masjid, a place of worship. لا تتخذوا قبري وثنا. Do not take my grave as a wathan, an idol place. لا تتخذوا قبري عيدا. Do not take my grave as a Eid, a place of Eid. All of this 5 days before he's passing away. Prophet ﷺ is in and out of consciousness and the likes. And he would say to his own family, Fatima radiallahu anha, his daughter, his most beloved daughter, he would say to her, Ya Fatima binti Muhammad, La ughni anki min Allahi shay'a. O Fatima, daughter of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, I cannot benefit you with regards to Allah any affair. I cannot protect you from Allah. Meaning, you have to take the means yourself. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, قُلْ لَا أَمْلِكُ لِنَفْسِي نَفْعًا وَلَا ضَرًّا. As we mentioned earlier, say, I do not possess any for myself any benefit nor any harm. If the Prophet ﷺ does not possess for himself any benefit or harm, how can he benefit and harm anyone after he passed away? Anyone that comes to his grave. And sadly, till today, if you go to Medina, you have Muslims coming from all over the world, paying thousands upon thousands to come to perform Hajj or Umrah. And sadly, they fall into bid'ah or shirk. They face the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, face him, and start making dua in that direction. Some of them might make istighatha. Some of them make beseech him. Shirk in the city of the Prophet ﷺ. Allahu musta'an. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to guide the ummah, to guide us and to guide the ummah of Muhammad ﷺ back to the Sunnah. طيب. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he says in the next chapter, he says, عن أبي مرثد الغنوي رضي الله عنه. Before that, he mentions a nice benefit here. The author, he says, فإذا كان هذا قول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في نفسه وفي أخص قرابته به وأحبهم إليه فما ظنك بسائر الأموات الذين لم يكونوا أنبياء معصومين ولا رسلا مرسلين بل غاية ما عند أحدهم أنه فرد من أفراد هذه الأمة المحمدية وواحد من أهل هذه الملة الإسلامية فهو أعجز وأعجز أن ينفع أو يدفع عنها ضررا وكيف لا يعجز عن شيء قد عجز عنه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأخبر به أمته كما أخبر عنه ربه وأمر بأن يقول للناس بأنه لا يملك لنفسه ضرا ولا نفعا وأنه لا يغني عن أخص قرابته من الله شيئا فيا عجبا كيف يطمع من له أدنى نصيب من العلم أو أقل حظ من عرفان أن ينفعه أو يضره فرد من أفراد أمة هذا النبي الذي يقول عن نفسه هذه المقالة. طيب. Here the author, he finishes off that chapter by saying nicely, if this is the case, or if this is the statement of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding himself, that he cannot benefit nor harm, and regarding the most closest of his family members, what do you think about those dead people that are not prophets, that are not infallible prophets, nor are they messengers that were sent by Allah? The most that they are is a member of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and a individual in the nation of the Prophet ﷺ. He's nobody special. He is a'jaz. He is more incapable than the Messenger ﷺ. Then he continues to mention that. So if the Prophet ﷺ, and he is who he is, cannot benefit himself, cannot benefit his daughter Fatima radiallahu anha, cannot benefit his family members, then how is it possible that some other guy who lives 1,000 years later, who died, who's not a prophet, who's not a messenger, is able to benefit you and harm you? Allahu musta'an. The last chapter, تحريم الصلاة إلى القبور, the impermissibility of praying towards the graves. عن أبي مرثد رضي الله عنه, that he said, the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said, لا تصلوا إلى القبور ولا تجلسوا عليها, do not pray towards the graves and do not sit on top of them. قلت, he says, the author, النص صريح في تحريم الصلاة إلى القبور. This evidence and this text is clear cut in the impermissibility and the prohibition of praying towards graves. وفي تحريم الجلوس عليها كما هي القاعدة الأصولية الأصل في النهي التحريم إلا لصارف. He says that this tahrim is also clear. He says وفي تحريم الجلوس عليه is also a prohibition against sitting on top of the graves, and the origin of any command when the Prophet ﷺ says do not do this, then the origin is that it is what? Haram. The Prophet ﷺ says do not face the Qibla when you are urinating or doing a number 2. Then is it a choice or is it obligatory? It's obligatory to stay away from it. Likewise here the Prophet ﷺ said do not pray towards the graves and do not sit on top of them. Then this is obligatory. Same topic, he says, what's the ruling of visiting yearly certain graveyards and certain cemeteries? We're not talking about going to your local cemetery here to visit someone that that passed away. We're not talking about that. To remind yourself of death and the likes, without specifying a specific date or specifying a specific month or the likes. So if you just say I'm going to go to the graveyard, remember death and the likes, for example, whenever it's easy for me. I'm free on Fridays, I'll go on Fridays, or I'm free on Thursday, I'll go on Friday. There's no problem with that. As long as you don't specify and say, I seek nearness to Allah by going every Thursday, or I'll go this day, what was the day today? 17 October, 17 October every single day, that's the day I'm going to go to the graveyard. As long as the person doesn't do that, he's allowed to go, sah? We're not talking about that. We're talking about these places that people seek out, and it's almost like a pilgrimage that they go to. Sadly exists in Yemen, in Egypt, Karbala, in Iran. These places where Muslims go. Imagine you go to Umrah and Hajj, right? Is there anywhere else that you go to for worship? That's where I seek out worship, to do tawaf around the Kaaba, to do Umrah, to pray in the Prophet's Masjid, or Masjid Al-Aqsa. These are the 3 places you're only supposed to travel to for an act of worship in a masjid. Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, Masjid in Mecca, Masjid Al-Haram ﷺ, and Masjid Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. Harraraha Allah. May Allah Azza wa Jal free it from the hands of the ghasibeen, oppressors. May Allah give them what they deserve. May Allah Azza wa Jal aid the Muslims over there. طيب. So these are the only 3 places you're allowed to go to. But we have people going to Yemen, Karbala, all these other places. What's the ruling of that? Some of them, they've never been to Mecca. And they're going to these places. Does anyone know any of their names? I forgot Allah. There's a place in Yemen the Sufis always go to.
The Hadramaut one.
Yeah.
Hud alayhi salam is buried there.
Yeah, they say Hud alayhi salam is buried there, and they go visit him. Grave. All the time, rakkis. Whenever they're going somewhere, you always find out where is it they're going. They're going to someone's grave. Alright, where are you going? I'm going to Karbala. Why? Hussein is buried there. Where are you going? I'm going to Egypt. Why? Fatima is buried there. Fulan is buried there. Oh, Sahullah. Shafi'i is buried. I'm going to his masjid to go see his grave. It's a sign of Ahl Shirk and the people of innovation that they have this extremism towards graves. Wallahi, even some of the Deobandis that are here in the UK, they'll be reading Bukhari. You'll be like, MashaAllah, they're reading Tawheed from Sahih Bukhari. You're like, maybe this guy is a bit better than the other guys. Then he says, I read Sahih Bukhari, all of it, at the grave of Imam Bukhari. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, I was at this graveyard, I was reading Bukhari. What's the extremism? You went all the way over there to Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan, wherever it is right now, traveled all the way there to go to a graveyard, and you sing at a graveyard and you're reading hadith book. Wallahi, akhi, it's sad. Wallahi, it's sad. This extremism is something that is prevalent and exists. May Allah Azza wa Jal guide us and guide those people. So in short, it's haram and it's not allowed. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا تشد الرحال إلا إلى ثلاثة مساجد. You're not allowed to travel except to 3 masajid. My masjid, meaning the Prophet's masjid in Medina, والمسجد الحرام, the masjid in Mecca, والمسجد الأقصى. طيب. So he mentions that there are 3 types of visiting the graves. ثلاثة أقسام. The first qism is ziyaratun shar'iyya. The ziyarah, the visiting of graves, that's allowed, permissible. The second category, we'll talk about each one in a minute. The second category is ziyaratun bid'iyya. The visiting graveyards, that is an innovation. Innovations take place in it. Or ziyaratun shirkiyya. Visiting the graveyards and it's shirk. So the first is a ziyaratul shar'iyya, and it is the one that has 2 conditions. It has 2 conditions. The first is, as we said earlier, you're not allowed to travel to the grave, to this grave that you're going to. You're not allowed to travel to it. So if you're in Birmingham or you're in London and you want to go visit the graveyard to remind yourself of death and the likes, then you're allowed to go because you're not traveling. It's in your city. Right? As for if you travel, then it's not ziyaratun shar'iyya, it's not the permissible legislated one anymore. Second condition is أَلَّا يَقُولَ الزَّائِرُ هُجْرًا or hajra, that he does not say lewd, foul speech at the grave. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْ زِيَارَةِ الْقُبُورِ فَزُورُوهَا. And in one narration, نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْ زِيَارَةِ الْقُبُورِ فَمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَزُورَ فليزر ولا تقولوا هجرا أو هجرا أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. نعم هجرا بضم الهاء. What is al-hujr? It's al-kalam al-fahish. It's speech that is lewd, foul, that's not good. So the second condition for ziyarah shar'iyya is if you do visit these graveyards, then you have to stay away from foul speech and the likes. And so from that is that a person makes dua to other than Allah. That's from the greatest of foul speech and lewd speech and kalam fahish. That you make dua to these graves, the dead people in the graves, or that you seek and beseech them, seek istighatha from them, and the likes. Wailing as well, that person wails, like the women excessively fake cry, and it's not allowed for women to visit the graveyards upon the most correct opinion. So these are the 2 conditions. Ziyarat al-shar'iyyah, that you're not allowed to travel towards any graves for the sake of a grave, and number 2, you're not allowed to say anything that is haram, like making dua to other than Allah and the likes. That's a ziyaratul shar'iyya. The second category, ziyaratun bid'iyya, is any ziyarah that is missing one of these 2 conditions. So if a person travels towards a grave, he's missing the first condition of not being allowed to travel. So if he travels to another city, another country, catches an aeroplane to go to a graveyard, then this ziyarah is bid'iyah. He's fallen into innovation. Prophet ﷺ warned against it. And is a path and is a wasila to shirk. The second one is that a person doesn't say foul speech. If a person starts saying things that are haram and the likes, then he has fallen into the second category of ziyaratun bid'iyah. The third category, ziyaratun shirkiyah, is التي وقع صاحبها في نوع من أنواع الشرك بالله عز وجل. Ziyarah, the third one is that a person visits the graves and he says something that is shirky. He falls into shirk with Allah, whatever category that is. So if a person makes dua, then it's shirk. If a person does slaughters to this person at the grave, then it's shirk. and the likes. Isti'adha, if he seeks refuge with this person, then he falls into shirk. وهكذا. So this ala kulli hal is just a categorization that helps you understand it, as we said.
Is it,
I want to, yeah.
sorry.
Go on.
Is it allowed to travel to your home country to visit the grave of your family?
I'll find out.
Huh?
I'll find out.
Alright.
Al-asl, you're not allowed to travel. But let's say you're already...
You're traveling anyways, but then
Yeah.
Allah.
If a person's already traveling, that's
Yeah.
different. Like now, are we allowed to travel to visit the Prophet ﷺ's grave? Prophet ﷺ's grave.
No.
Ibn Umar used to visit the Prophet ﷺ, give salam to him. You're not allowed to travel? You're not allowed to travel. You're not allowed to travel. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said you're not allowed to travel for the sake of, except for the 3 masajid. But if you're traveling to perform Umrah or Hajj, what's your intention for traveling? To perform Umrah or Hajj, to pray in the Prophet's masjid, to pray in Masjid al-Haram. That's your intention. But when you are there in Medina, then you're allowed to go to the Prophet's grave and give salam. It's like Ibn Umar used to do. You never went for the grave. Even for Masjid Quba, you never traveled for Masjid Quba. You traveled for Umrah. You traveled to pray in the Prophet's masjid. Now you're in Medina, you can go to Masjid Quba. If you have wudu, and you make wudu before you leave your house, the hotel, and you go there, pray 2 rak'ahs, you get the reward of Umrah. Is that clear? So if a person's already traveling back home, and then they have their fathers in the cemetery allowed to visit, that's fine. That's fine. But is it allowed for other than that? Allahu A'lam. Allahu A'lam. Allahu A'lam. Why? Because there's some evidences that could be possible. Prophet ﷺ, he sought permission to go and visit his mother. He sought permission to seek forgiveness for his mother, and his mother died upon kufr. And Allah Azza wa Jal did not give him permission to seek forgiveness for his mother. Why couldn't he seek forgiveness for her? Because she died upon disbelief. Likewise his father. Some people, they say, how did the mother and the father, the Prophet ﷺ, die upon kufr? I'm not saying from my pocket. The Prophet ﷺ said it himself. He said, this one hadith, I sought permission from my Lord to seek forgiveness from my mother. Allah Azza wa Jalla did not give me permission. So then I sought permission from my Lord to visit my mother, and he was given permission. So someone could say maybe this is specific evidence to visit a person's mother and father. That's why I'm trying to say I want to find out. And his father, the Prophet ﷺ, was asked about, another man was asked about his father. He said, your father's in the hellfire. So the man became sad. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, my father and your father are in the hellfire, to make him ease his pain. Which shows you that the 2 parents of Prophet ﷺ, they were not upon Islam and Hanifiyya. Allahu musta'an. I was going to mention something. Any questions? Maybe I remember. خلاص. طيب. Last thing. Where does your English book finish? Has it finished? Where does it finish? Let me see. Because there's some other stuff that I like is repetitive. We've already done it before.
The vocabulary stuff like
The categorization at the end. Yeah, I don't think that's. It's good. We already done that before. All right, so we do this last part that we haven't done, and then we'll stop there. So the second to last is what's the ruling of putting roads in the path or in where there's graves, or mala'ib, playgrounds, or car parks. This is something that happens. You have this right now in the UK, everywhere, right? Pigeon Park, got graves everywhere. It's not graves. People not sitting on there. People not doing all sorts of stuff. That's haram in Islam. Ihtiram and out of respect for the person that's in that grave. There's also here King's Heath. The other day I was walking there, and there's a path which just looks like a normal path, and then under it says so and so is buried right here. So and so is buried right here. In Islam, we're not allowed to walk over that. Why? Prophet ﷺ, he warned against sitting on top of the graveyards and the likes. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says here in this hadith, لأن يجلس أحدكم على جمرة فتحرق ثيابه فتخلص إلى جلده خير له من أن يجلس على قبر. That a person was to sit on a jamrah, like a coal, hot coal. That a person was to sit on top of that, and that it burns his clothes, and then it goes and reaches his skin. Is better for him than that he sits on top of a grave. It's better for him that he gets burnt from that hot coal that he's sitting on, his clothes get burnt, than that he sits on a grave. And the Prophet ﷺ, the other hadith we mentioned earlier, he prohibited building on top of it, and he also prohibited sitting on top of it. And so if sitting is bad, imagine walking on top of it, which is even worse. Min babi awla. And so the ulama, they mention it's not allowed, it's haram, and harming the believer is haram. Likewise, harming the dead is haram as well, and that includes like harming their bones or taking them out or the likes. So all of that is not allowed.
Is there any evidence to say they feel the pain if you harm them?
There isn't evidence to show like breaking the bone or stuff like that. There's a hadith that talks about that. Yeah.
What about harming them verbally?
That's only going to harm you, I think. Because
No, I mean.
it's going to harm that person that says that does it, because he's alive, and if he falls into backbiting someone that's dead or slandering or the likes, then that's only going to harm him. The dead person,
Are you allowed to speak for Allah? Someone that's dead and did a lot of wrong things.
if a person is Muslim, فَقَدْ أَفْضَى إِلَى مَا, they've gone to the actions that they've done, so you don't speak about a Muslim except if there is some evil that still exists because of that person. Like, let's say for example, a person, some drug thing he started, or maybe like a bid'ah, for example, he started an innovation, he was the first one to do, and he was, in his lifetime, he spread it everywhere, and he misguided so many people. Now, in order to guide the people and to refute the innovation, and then you have to mention that dead person in order to refute it, that's allowed. But generally speaking, to talk about, that guy, he did this, and he used to smoke, and for a Muslim, you shouldn't talk about all of that. You know why? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Antum shuhada Allahi al-ard." You are the witnesses of Allah on earth. Some of the Sahaba, they saw a grave being put, and they spoke good of him. So the Prophet ﷺ said, wajabat, it's become binding. And they saw a grave and they said bad things about it, and they said, wajabat, is binding. You are the witnesses of Allah on earth. So there's another hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, قَدْ أَفْضُوا إِلَى مَا فَعَلُوا وَكَمَا قَالَ صلى الله عليه وسلم. Last chapter. So you're not allowed to walk on top of graves, you're not allowed to sit on top of graves and the likes. And that shows you, look how all round Islam is. It hasn't left anything untouched. Tell me which religion or which organization or anything talked about not sitting on top of graves, not harming graves and the likes 1,000 years ago. Forget that, scratch that. 100 years ago. Scratch that right now. You won't find that. That detail, that diqqah, only in Islam. Alhamdulillah, Allah Azza wa Jalla guided us to Islam. Ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make us die upon Islam. The last one he talks about, as he talked about harming the dead here, he talks about the person that a person should من قد أسلم بلسانه ولم يفض الإيمان إلى قلبه. The Prophet said, gathering of people that have entered into Islam with their tongues, but Iman hasn't settled in their hearts. لا تؤذوا المسلمين ولا تعيروهم أو كما قال. Do not harm the Muslims nor speak ill of them. What does it say? Insult. Do not insult them. ولا تتبعوا عوراتهم. Do not follow their mistakes or their mistakes. Do not follow their mistakes. فإنه من تتبع عورة أخي. For indeed, whoever follows the mistakes, تتبع means to, like, investigative person, like he's just following up on a person's life and looking for mistakes. Do not follow the mistakes. فإنه, for indeed the one that follows the mistakes of his brother, the Muslim brother, تتبع الله عورته. Allah Azza wa Jal will follow up on his mistakes. ومن تتبع الله عورته يفضحه ولو في جوف رحله. And whoever Allah Azza wa Jal, he follows his mistakes. What do they say? Exposes his mistake. Whoever Allah Azza wa Jal does tatabbu' of in his mistakes, يفضحه, he will expose him. وَلَوْ فِي جَوْفِ رَحْلِهِ, even if he's in the middle and the deep inside of his own house. What does it say? House in it?
Saddle.
Saddle, okay. So that shows you, don't harm the Muslims when they're dead, nor harm them when they are alive. And whoever has that character of doing tatabbu' of the awrat of the people. Look, everyone's got sins, everyone's got mistakes. But what we've been commanded with as Muslims is to do satr, is to conceal. You saw your brother doing something haram, it's not something that's widespread, it's not something that everyone knows, cover it, as if you never saw it. Man satara musliman, whoever covers, conceals, hides the mistake and the sin of a brother, Allah Azza wa Jal will conceal and cover him. Man satara musliman satara Allahu alayhi, or kama qal. So that's from the adab, that a person is always trying to make excuses for his brothers, trying to cover them even if it's a clear-cut mistake. We're talking about sins, and that you shouldn't be the one that exposes people and follow them up on every itty and every nitty thing that you could find. And because everyone can find something on someone else. Someone goes and he sees that this person, look, he's mathalan, he does lectures, and I'm going to listen to all of his lectures, not to benefit, not to kada, just to find any mistakes. Like these people, may Allah Azza wa Jal guide them. These people that follow people's Quran mistakes, for example, or Arabic mistakes or the likes. Look, la shak, a person that hasn't studied the Arabic or hasn't studied the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal should not be talking about the religion of Allah upon ignorance. Especially the person that doesn't know the basics of the Arabic language. He doesn't he doesn't have the basics of the deen. He shouldn't go into the field of da'wah and he's jahil. Okay, but let's say this person has, and there are many people that haven't, lil asaf. Or scratch that. Let's say this person has something that he's good at. Like some brothers, they're good at giving da'wah to people in the streets, for example. Street da'wah. Calling non-Muslims to Islam. That's his field, stick to that field. Don't go out that field. Don't start talking about hadith and don't start talking about fiqh and then start talking about qira'at and start talking about all these other fields that person is not expert in. Stick to your field, do a good job there, khalas, stick to it. But at the same time, even though it's wrong, if he does go into hadith and fiqh, it's wrong, and if the ulama warn against him, then that's no problem. Like in that extra thing of following up every nitty-bitty and every mistake he made and da-da-da-da, wallahi, you fear for those type of people. You do that, someone's going to do it to you. You do that to someone, however you are to the creation of Allah, others will be to you. Someone else will find the same stuff on you, or if not worse. Even worse than that, sins, people that follow up on the sins, this person he did this person drank alcohol, this person did that, this one, this, just following up. You do that, someone will follow up on your sins, and Allah Azza wa Jalla will expose you, just like the hadith says, Allah will expose you even if it's in your own saddle. It says in the narration, I think it says house, I think it means house. Sallu fi rihalikum. That's mistranslation. Prophet ﷺ said in hadith, when it's raining, Sallu fi rihalikum, you say in the pray in your saddles, pray in your homes, pray in your home. So it's the same wording. So it means even if he's in the middle of his home, Allah Azza wa Jalla will expose him. Is that clear? And that's reality, you see that. Wallahu a'lam wa billahi tawfiq. Any questions? No questions? طيب, any what do you guys have suggestions for next book? طيب, we'll see how it goes. 40 Nawawi, we did it recently 2 years ago, I think, and there's our brother teaching it in Masha Noor. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I want to tell you now, there's going to be a mini conference next week here, not here, sorry, Masjid An-Noor, Bosley Green. So on Tuesday, same time, actually maybe a bit earlier, next week's holidays, Tuesday from 4:30 to 9 o'clock. 4:30 to 9 o'clock, like 4 hours. Mahamed AbdurRazaq is coming from Cardiff. And it's going to be, and I know a lot of brothers have been asking about finance and this and that, so specifically in that topic. So any questions you got on finance or money or getting rid of haram money or cryptocurrency or Bitcoin or drop shipping or all of that stuff, get your questions ready, inshallah. He's going to do intensive on the rulings of mu'amalat. Okay, that's on Tuesday, inshallah. The plan is on Saturday, so that's on Tuesday next week, the 24th. On Saturday after that, 28th, I think, the 28th of October, it's still holidays. On Saturday, same Masjid Nur, I'm going to do, inshallah, the ahkam of nikah, the rulings of marriage, and a little bit maybe divorce.
So when was that?
So this is going to be next week, Tuesday, Masjid Nur, and the Saturday after that, Tuesday. So it's Tuesday and Saturday, inshallah ta'ala. I'll put the post out so
So you know the nikah one, can you also go through like scenarios meeting the potential and also
Inshallah.
how to conduct the nikah? That would be
inshallah we'll mention bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Inshallah. That's Allah taysir.
because I don't hear that a lot.
Yeah, abshir, inshallah. May Allah give us tawfiq. How many people are not married here? That's the origin, yeah? Khalas. May Allah Azza wa Jal allow you to get married to righteous spouses and give you righteous children. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us tawfiq wa billahi tawfiq. Wa sallallahu wa sallam barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. After the conference, obviously we want to continue Tuesday lessons here. I might start a Friday lesson as well, Mission Nur.